think documentation is one of these unsexy topics that actually, when you see it implemented properly, is a mind expanding thing. Like it can be a sexy thing. I wondered what you thought about that.
Yeah, well, I guess the first thing to say is, it's here as a pillar because it is so important, and yet I have been as a franchisor whereby we spent inordinate amount of times on the operating system, on the documentation, on the operations manual, only to find that actually almost no one used it. And that's, for me, that's the worst possible outcome, isn't it? That you've actually invested the time and the effort and the money in creating that, but then because it's in a format that actually it's too wieldy, it's not easy to access, particularly when you are at different points of the journey. And quite often these documents can be, absolutely huge in terms of content, whatever. So I think, I'm pleased to see that nowadays there is such, advancements coming down the line in terms of, again, I'm very minded of my last conversation with Penny Hopkinson, for example, and the work that Penny's been doing on Manual Magic, which I think is fantastic, and using, the technology with AI, etc., to be able to create, what is no longer a static, 50 or 100-page manual document, but to create this ecosystem.
And it's not necessarily coming from the top, it's coming from the people sometimes who are doing the tasks as well.
And that's a really interesting point, isn't it? Because, in the days gone by whereby, let's say we, not me personally, but there have been a lot of people over the years who have kind of operated as command and control, if you like. So everything coming from the top and flowing down to wherever that needed to go. But to your point, and to Penny's point, the reality of actually creating that from the ground up and creating that ecosystem where that is enabled is absolutely fantastic. Of course, there still needs to be, systems and controls around how that is managed, of course, but nevertheless, some of the most innovative developments, because let's face it, in business, we're constantly developing and improving whatever it is that we're doing, hopefully. But being able to capture that in a way which is still putting the franchisor in control, but actually getting things from the coalface is it is a game changer, really is.
Yeah, and that's going to help with this principle of reliability and consistency. If you, rather than trying to flick through a huge Argos style manual, if you've got a video that's been recorded on someone's phone that doesn't have a voiceover, shows someone's hands doing the job that you're about to do, and you can scan to that from a QR code or something, it's like, well, that becomes a living, working document.
And 100%, and it also means as well, but the reality of life is that whenever you need access to these things, you need access to it in the moment. You need to be able to get the information, and for a lot of franchise businesses that are operating, way beyond 9 to 5 or whatever, when typical franchise support would be available. Being able to access that in a way which, I've got to understand it, make the change, and go, it's no longer nice to have; it's essential.
Let's just touch on territory mapping then, because I think we are going to cover this in more detail in a future session. But what do people need to understand at the top level?
Yeah, I think just very, very high level. The power of data, and my background is very much not from a data background, but I understand the value of being able to use the insights and the knowledge that can come from having territories mapped out effectively right at the beginning. That's assuming that it's a franchise business that requires territory mapping, which of course not every franchise business does. But if you are operating a territory model, as I say, I first became involved with territory mapping as a franchisor probably 10 years ago, 12 years ago, something like that. And I'm a real advocate of Stuart Lee and Atlas Mapping and Vision. I've used that system myself, so understand the power of it. But even from where it was, years ago to where it is now, the knowledge that provides in terms of actually making a significant difference for the franchise partners who are potentially looking at how to get the best return on investment within their community and territory, the insight and data that is available is just off the scale. So, and again, literally, this has the potential to improve not just profitability in the short term, but long-term asset value.
And if you get it wrong,
sorry,
Claire, I was going to say, if you get it wrong, it's so hard to unpick as well.
100%. Again, I've been there. I mean, I've been there whereby, particularly at the early stages of a franchisor's journey, if a franchisee asks for a bigger territory or an extension to a territory or whatever, it's so easy just to say, yeah, that's fine, no problem, because you'd think you're doing the right thing, but the long-term impact of that, and as you say, to try and unpick it is torturous. It really is. And the other thing I think, just to say on this one last point, one of the biggest challenges that I've faced and I see other franchisors facing is the question of expectation. And it's so often missed that actually expectations are so misaligned right from the get-go. So you get a franchisee who has an expectation of X, and you get the franchisor who's an expectation of Y. And because that hasn't been clearly articulated, discussed, nailed down right at the outset, you end up, you can regularly end up whereby the franchisor is dissatisfied because they're not getting the return on investment that they expected from the territory, and the franchise or franchisee relationship is impacted negatively because you have literally got two people who are knocking heads together, one who is very satisfied in terms of where they are, in terms of the input that they're making and the level of income that they're making, and the other thinking, I've blocked this territory, and have no chance of actually mining it for the opportunity that is available. So really,
I was going to say, yes, having not been around a territory-based franchise in the past, I was blown away just in terms of looking at the demographic, the penetration levels within certain opportunities. It's powerful stuff. It really is.
It is.